The sleek research vessel Starseeker glided silently through the asteroid belt, its purple-tinted hull reflecting the distant starlight. Captain Val stood at the observation deck, her large eyes widening as she watched the scene before her. Her antennae twitched nervously, picking up the electromagnetic disturbances from nearby space rocks. "This can't be right," she muttered, adjusting the sensors again. Who would build a station in such a dangerous location? The answer lay right in front of her. Humans. A mining facility had been constructed on one of the larger asteroids, its metal structure wrapped around the rocky surface like a spider's web. What shocked Val most wasn't the station's existence, but the sight of a single human figure working outside it. "Magnification, please," she ordered, and the ship's AI complied immediately. The screen zoomed in on the human, who was casually performing maintenance on an external panel. No safety tether, just magnetic boots keeping him anchored to the asteroid's surface. Val's second-in-command, Officer Len, entered the observation deck. His scales rippled with concern as he noticed what she was watching. "Captain, our readings show severe radiation bursts in that sector. The human should be taking cover, not whatever they're doing." They watched in horror as the human deliberately turned off his magnetic boots, pushed off from the surface, and drifted to another section of the facility. He used nothing but a small handheld thruster for propulsion, treating the deadly void of space as if it were no more threatening than a swimming pool. How are they still alive as a species? Len wondered aloud, voicing the question that had puzzled their research team since they first discovered human activity in this sector. Val's scientific curiosity got the better of her natural caution. Their species, the Verax, had evolved as prey animals on their homeworld. Every decision was carefully weighed, every risk meticulously calculated. But humans seem to operate on a completely different level of risk assessment. "Open a communication channel," Val ordered, surprising her second-in-command. "Captain, our protocols suggest at least 3 days of observation before." "Look at them," Val interrupted, pointing at the screen where the human had now started welding something to the station's hull. "They're clearly capable of surviving here. And if we wait 3 days, we might miss the chance to understand how." The communication officer's hands trembled slightly as she initiated contact. A few moments later, a surprisingly cheerful voice responded. "This is Tom from Outpost 47. Welcome to our little corner of space. I'd wave, but I've got my hands full with this maintenance work." Val's translator processed the casual greeting, and she had to stop herself from flinching at the human's relaxed attitude. "This is Captain Val of the research vessel Starseeker. We couldn't help but notice your external maintenance activities." "Oh yeah, just fixing a micrometeorite puncture in the coolant system. Nothing major. Would you folks like to dock? We don't get many visitors out here." The entire bridge crew turned to look at Val, their expressions a mixture of fear and fascination. Docking with an unknown station, without proper safety assessments. Yet the human spoke as if he were inviting them over for a casual meal. Val felt her heart racing as she made her decision. Their mission was to study other species, after all, and humans were proving to be the most intriguing species they'd encountered yet. "We would be honored," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "Though we'll need to follow our docking protocols." "Take your time," Tom replied cheerfully. "I've got about an hour of work left out here anyway. The station's AI will guide you in when you're ready." As Val began the extensive docking preparation sequence, she couldn't help but watch the human continue his work. He hung there in space, surrounded by deadly radiation, floating rocks, and the infinite void. Yet he acted as if he were simply doing yard work on a peaceful afternoon. "Fascinating," she whispered to herself. "Simply fascinating." The docking process took nearly 2 hours. Val's crew followed every safety protocol in their manual, triple-checking each system before proceeding to the next step. Through the viewing screen, they watched Tom finish his repairs, wave at their ship, and casually jet back inside the station using his small thruster pack. When the airlocks finally connected with a soft hiss, Val led her team through their decontamination procedure. Her antennae wouldn't stop twitching, picking up unfamiliar vibrations from the human station. The inner door opened, revealing Tom and two other humans waiting with friendly smiles. Val noticed immediately that they hadn't even worn protective suits to meet an unknown alien species. "Welcome aboard," Tom said, stepping forward. He was taller than Val had expected, with weathered skin that spoke of years of hard work. "Sorry about the mess. We weren't exactly expecting visitors in this part of space." Val's eyes darted around, checking for escape routes, a natural instinct of her species. The station's corridor looked sturdy enough, but the casual way the humans leaned against the walls made her nervous. Didn't they realize they were in a thin metal tube surrounded by vacuum? "Thank you for having us," Val replied carefully. "I must ask, how do you manage to work out there with such minimal safety equipment?" Tom laughed, a sound that made Val's crew huddle closer together. "Minimal? This suit's got more backup systems than I can count. Want to see how it works?" Before Val could protest, Tom walked over to a storage unit and pulled out his spacesuit. He began pointing out various features, handling the complex equipment as casually as if it were everyday clothing. Which, Val realized with growing amazement, it was for him. "The boots have triple redundant magnetic systems," Tom explained, "and the thruster pack has enough fuel for 6 hours of continuous use, even though we never need more than 30 minutes to get back to the station." "But what about the radiation?" Officer Len asked, his scales shifting to a worried pale blue. "Our sensors detected dangerous levels in this sector." "Oh, that." Tom shrugged. "The suit handles it. Plus, we've got medical treatments that take care of any exposure. Been working these belts for 5 years now. Fit as a fiddle." Val noticed that the other two humans, Mark and Amy, they'd introduced themselves as, were trying not to smile at her crew's obvious discomfort. She felt a strange mix of embarrassment and curiosity. "Would you like a tour of the station?" Amy offered. "We can show you how we process the ore we mine." Val's crew looked at her with pleading eyes, but her scientific curiosity won out. "Yes, please. Though we'll need to conduct our standard safety scans first." "No problem," Mark said, then added with a grin. "But just so you know, the station does its own safety checks every 30 seconds. Hasn't failed us yet." As they walked through the station, Val began to notice something interesting. Despite what seemed like a casual attitude toward danger, the humans had safety measures everywhere. Emergency oxygen masks hung at regular intervals. Escape pod access points were clearly marked. Warning lights and status displays covered the walls. The humans weren't ignorant of the dangers. They had simply learned to live with them so completely that precautions had become second nature. "Here's where we control the mining drones," Tom said, leading them into a large room filled with screens. "Sometimes we have to go out and fix them manually when they get stuck, but mostly." A loud alarm suddenly cut through the air. Val's crew immediately dropped into defensive postures, their bodies instinctively preparing for danger. Tom just glanced at a nearby screen. "Ah, shift change alarm. Time flies when you're having fun. Anyone hungry? The cafeteria makes a pretty decent synthetic burger." Val stared at him, amazed once again by the human ability to remain calm. Here they were, balanced on the edge of death in so many ways, and they worried about the quality of their lunch. Humans, she was learning, were full of surprises. The cafeteria visit was cut short by a deep rumble that shook the entire station. Val's antennae immediately detected a change in the station's electromagnetic field, and her crew's scales shifted to alarming shades of gray. "That's not normal," Tom said, his casual demeanor suddenly professional. He tapped his wrist computer, bringing up a holographic display of the station's systems. "We've got a problem with the main reactor's cooling system." Val's crew huddled together, their natural instincts screaming at them to flee. But what caught Val's attention was how quickly the humans switched from relaxed to focused, without a hint of panic. "Status report," Tom commanded, and the station's AI responded immediately. Primary and secondary cooling systems failing, reactor temperature rising. Estimated 15 minutes until critical failure. Officer Len's scales turned almost white. We need to evacuate immediately. Our ship can't leave yet. Amy interrupted, her fingers flying over a control panel. The reactor's magnetic field is interfering with both ships' engines. We're stuck here until we fix this. Val watched as her worst nightmare unfolded. Not only were they trapped on a failing station, but their own ship was now in danger too. She began reciting her species' emergency protocols. First, we must form a committee to assess. No time. Tom cut in. He was studying a complex diagram of the reactor system. The normal fix would take hours. We need a faster solution. He looked up, his eyes bright with what Val could only describe as excitement. I have an idea, but you're not going to like it. What could be worse than our current situation? Val asked, immediately regretting her words as Tom explained his plan. The cooling system's main pipeline is blocked. Something from the asteroid field must have gotten in. But there's a maintenance shaft that runs parallel to it. Tom pointed to a narrow tube on the diagram. Someone could climb in there, reach the blockage point, and clear it manually. Val's translator must have malfunctioned. Climb. Inside, near an overheating reactor. It's our only shot, Mark said, already pulling out radiation suits from a nearby locker. The shaft has just enough room for one person. The radiation levels in that area are already twice the safe limit, Amy reported, checking her screens. And rising. Val expected the humans to give up their crazy plan. Instead, they started arguing about who would go. I've got the most experience with the cooling system, Tom said. But I'm smaller. I can move faster through the shaft, Amy countered. My radiation tolerance is higher, Mark added. Val watched in astonishment as they quickly settled the matter with something they called rock, paper, scissors. Tom won, or perhaps lost, depending on how you looked at it. The radiation will kill you, Val said, her voice shaking. Tom was already putting on his suit. Nah, we've got great medical treatment for radiation exposure. Besides, if we don't fix this, we're all dead anyway. He grinned at her. Sometimes you have to choose between bad options and worse ones. The next few minutes were a blur of activity. While Tom prepared for his dangerous mission, his fellow humans coordinated with Val's crew to set up emergency force fields and prepare emergency medical equipment. Captain, Officer Len whispered to Val, our safety protocols strictly forbid this kind of risk. Val watched as Tom checked his suit one last time. The humans moved with precise efficiency, no movement wasted, no time spent on fear. They weren't being reckless. They were choosing survival over safety. Time to try something new, Val replied, surprising herself. How can we help? Tom looked up from his suit checks, his smile visible through his helmet visor. Actually, those sensor antennae of yours might come in handy. Want to help me navigate the shaft? The station shuddered again, and warning lights flashed red across every screen. They were out of time, and out of options. Val stepped forward, her antennae extended. Tell me what you need. Tom crawled through the narrow maintenance shaft while Val guided him using her antennae's sensitivity to electromagnetic fields. The reactor's heat made the metal walls glow a dull red, and Val's sensors detected radiation levels climbing steadily higher. Turn left at the next junction, Val said, trying to keep her voice steady. The blockage is about 10 meters ahead. Copy that, Tom replied, his breathing steady despite the intense heat. You know, this reminds me of the time I had to fix a broken drill head inside an active volcano on Mars. Val's antennae twitched in shock. You did what? Someone had to do it. Tom's voice remained cheerful even as he dragged himself through the scorching passage. Humans have always been like this. We see something that needs doing, we figure out how to do it. But how do you overcome the fear? Val asked, genuinely curious now. Her own species would never willingly enter such danger. Tom was quiet for a moment, focusing on squeezing through a particularly tight spot. We don't overcome it. We use it. Fear keeps you sharp, makes you notice important details. The trick is not letting it paralyze you. A warning alarm blared through the station. Reactor temperature reaching critical levels. The AI announced. 10 minutes to containment failure. Tom. Amy called over the comm. Your radiation exposure is getting close to the danger zone. Story of my life, Tom grunted. Val, how close am I to the blockage? Val concentrated on the electromagnetic readings. 3 meters. But the radiation there is. It's far beyond safe levels. Define safe, Tom said with a laugh that turned into a cough. Because right now, the safest thing for everyone is getting that cooling system working again. Val suddenly understood something about humans. They didn't ignore danger. They weighed different types of danger against each other and chose the path that saved the most lives, even at personal risk. I can see it, Tom reported. Looks like a chunk of metal debris, probably from that meteor shower last week. Going to try to dislodge it. Val watched her sensor readings anxiously as Tom worked. The temperature in the shaft had risen so high that her equipment was having trouble getting clear readings. How was Tom still functioning in that heat? Almost. Got it. Tom's voice was strained now. Just need to. There. A loud clang echoed through the station, followed by the wonderful sound of liquid flowing through pipes. The reactor's warning alarms began to quiet, and temperature readings started dropping. Cooling system restored to 80% functionality, the AI announced. Reactor temperature stabilizing. Time to get out of here, Tom said, his voice weaker than before. Though I might need some help with that. Val looked at her crew, who were still huddled in their safety position. Then she looked at Mark and Amy, who were already moving to help their friend. Making a decision that went against every instinct of her species, she stepped forward. I can guide him out the fastest way using my antennae, she said, and our ship has advanced medical facilities. The next 20 minutes were tense as they helped Tom navigate back through the shaft and then rushed him to the alien ship's medical bay. Val's doctor, despite his trembling scales, quickly began treating the radiation exposure. By all normal logic, Val said, watching the treatment, you should be dead. That level of radiation. Logic. Tom managed a weak smile from the medical bed. Humans have something better than logic. We have stubborn determination. Tell me you've never done something your species considered impossible. Val thought about how she had just broken nearly every safety protocol her people had. Perhaps, she said slowly, humans aren't the only ones who can learn to manage their fears. That's the spirit, Tom said, giving her a thumbs up. Now, about that story of the Mars volcano. Val settled in to listen, realizing that her understanding of courage was changing with every minute she spent with these remarkable humans. While Tom recovered in the medical bay, a new problem emerged. The station's AI detected a massive dust cloud approaching from the asteroid belt. Normally, the station's shields would protect against such threats, but the recent reactor incident had drained most of their power. Shields are at 15% capacity, Amy reported from the control room. That dust cloud will tear through them like paper. Val watched the humans work, noting how they remained focused despite the new danger. Her own crew had suggested immediate evacuation, but the humans were determined to find another solution. We can't abandon the station, Mark explained. There's 3 years of mining research stored here, plus the equipment is worth more than we can count. Val's antennae picked up strange readings from the approaching cloud. It's not just dust, she said. There are chunks of metal in there, probably from destroyed mining drones. Tom sat up in his medical bed, ignoring the doctor's protests. The backup generators, he said. If we reroute their power to the shields. Already tried. Amy interrupted. They're not compatible with the shield system. Val noticed something interesting on her readings. The metal fragments in the cloud. They have the same signature as your mining drones. Could we use that? The humans looked at her with sudden interest. Tom's eyes lit up with that now familiar spark of excitement that usually meant he was about to suggest something dangerous. "The drone control room," he said. "We could reprogram the station's remaining drones to generate their own magnetic fields, if we position them right. They could deflect the cloud." Mark finished. But the control room systems were damaged in the reactor incident. Someone would need to manually reprogram each drone. Val's crew immediately backed away, their scales turning pale at the mere suggestion of going near the damaged section of the station. But Val stood her ground, remembering what she had learned about courage from Tom. "My antennae," she said, surprising everyone including herself. "They can interface with your drone systems. I could reprogram them faster than anyone else." "Captain," Officer Len protested, "the safety protocols will get us all killed," Val finished. She turned to Tom. "You trusted me to guide you through the maintenance shaft. Now trust me with your drones." Tom studied her for a moment, then nodded. "The control room lost atmospheric pressure during the reactor incident. You'll need a suit." "I don't know how to operate human spacesuits," Val admitted. "I'll teach you," Amy offered. "It's not that hard once you get used to it." The next few minutes were a blur of activity. While Amy helped Val into a spacesuit modified for her alien body, Mark calculated the exact positions where they needed to place the drones. Tom, despite still being weak from radiation exposure, insisted on monitoring everything from the medical bay. Val looked at her reflection in the suit's visor. Just yesterday, she would have considered this plan too risky to even consider. Now she was about to walk into a depressurized room to reprogram mining drones while a cloud of destructive space debris approached. "Your species isn't naturally prone to taking risks," Tom said over the comm. "Why are you doing this?" Val thought about it as she walked to the airlock. "Because sometimes the brave choice and the logical choice are the same thing. You taught me that." "Ready?" Amy asked, her hand on the airlock controls. Val looked at her trembling crew, then at the determined faces of the humans. She remembered how Tom had faced death to save them all in the reactor shaft. Now it was her turn to be brave. "Ready," she said, straightening her shoulders. "Let's save this station." The airlock hissed open, and Val stepped into the damaged drone control room. Her heartbeats quickened as she saw the stars through the massive hole in the station's wall, held back only by an emergency force field that flickered weakly. "How are you doing, Val?" Tom's voice came through her suit's comm system. "Terrified," she admitted, moving carefully toward the drone control panel, "but focusing on the task like you taught me." Through the large window, she could see the approaching dust cloud. It looked like a dark wall of destruction, filled with twisted metal and rocks from countless destroyed mining equipment. "First drone coming online," Amy reported from the main control room. "Val, you should be able to connect to it now." Val extended her antennae, letting them touch the control panel. The sensation was strange through the suit, but she could still feel the drone's electronic signals. Her species' natural ability to sense and manipulate electromagnetic fields had never been used quite like this before. "Connection established," she said, beginning the reprogramming process. Moving drone into position. On the main screen, she watched as the first drone flew out into space, positioning itself exactly where Mark had calculated. Its magnetic field activated, creating an invisible barrier against the approaching debris. "One down, 11 to go," Tom said encouragingly. "And you've got 8 minutes before that cloud hits." Val moved to the next control panel, trying to ignore how the force field flickered behind her. One failure, one wrong move, and she would be sucked into space. The thought made her scales shift color under the suit, but she kept working. "Remember," Amy coached through the comm, "you don't have to fight the fear. Just don't let it stop you." 6 minutes left. 5 drones reprogrammed. "The cloud is accelerating," Mark reported. "The station's gravity well is pulling it in faster than we calculated." 4 minutes. 8 drones done. The room shuddered as the first small particles began hitting the station's weakened shields. Val's antennae picked up the vibrations even through her suit, but she forced herself to stay focused. Shields down to 10%. Amy announced, "We need those drones now." 2 minutes. 10 drones in position. A larger piece of debris struck the force field behind Val, making it flicker dangerously. She couldn't help but remember all her species' safety protocols, all the rules she was breaking. But she thought of Tom in the reactor shaft, choosing action over safety when lives were at stake. "Last drone," she said, her voice steadied despite her racing hearts. "Connecting now." The final drone was the trickiest. Its systems were partially damaged, requiring Val to delve deeper with her antennae sensitivity than she'd ever done before. She could feel the electronic pathways, could sense where the programming needed to go. 30 seconds to impact. Val's antennae trembled with effort as she pushed through the drone's damaged circuits, forcing the new programming into place. "Done," she shouted. "Drone 12 is responding." She watched through the window as the last drone took its position, completing the defensive line just as the clouds struck. The drone's magnetic fields lit up like a string of stars, catching and deflecting the deadly debris. Pieces of metal and rock bounced away from the station, guided by the magnetic fields into safer trajectories. The impacts shook the station, but the combined power of the drones held. "It's working," Tom said, his voice full of pride. "Val, you did it." Val watched the light show outside, her heart still racing, but now with excitement rather than fear. She had faced her species' deepest instincts and won. She had chosen action over safety, just like a human. "No," she replied, smiling inside her helmet. "We did it. Together." 2 days after the dust cloud incident, Val stood in the station's observation deck, watching the repair drones fix the damage to the outer hull. Her crew was busy helping the humans restore the station's systems, no longer jumping at every unusual sound or flickering light. "Credit for your thoughts?" Tom asked, walking up beside her. The human had finally been cleared from medical bay, though he still moved a bit slower than usual. "I was thinking about fear," Val replied, her antennae gently moving as they detected the electromagnetic fields from the repair work. "When we first arrived, I couldn't understand how humans could live like this, surrounded by constant danger. And now," Tom leaned against the window, careful not to disturb her antennae's readings. "Now I understand that bravery isn't about not feeling fear. It's about what you do with it." She turned to face him. "My species evolved to run from danger. Yours evolved to face it. But both approaches have their value." Officer Len approached them, his scales now a calm blue color instead of the nervous gray of their first day. "Captain, the Council has responded to our report about the humans." Val had sent a detailed message explaining everything they had learned, including her own experiences with human-style problem-solving. She had expected the Council to be horrified. Instead, they want to establish a permanent scientific exchange, Len said, still sounding surprised. "They believe our cautious nature combined with human adaptability could lead to significant advances for both species." Tom grinned. "Well, you did prove that your antennae could interface with our technology in ways we never imagined. And I have to admit, some of your safety protocols might have prevented that reactor incident in the first place." "Speaking of protocols," Amy called from the doorway, "Mark and I have been working with Val's engineering team. We think we can modify the station's sensors to work with Verax technology. No more surprise dust clouds." Val watched as her crew and the humans worked together, sharing ideas and teaching each other new ways of thinking. One of her scientists was carefully explaining their detailed safety checks to Mark, while Amy was showing another Verax how to operate the mining drones more efficiently. "You know what the funny thing is," Tom said, watching the same scene. "When humans first started exploring space, we thought we were ready for anything. But we never imagined that one of our greatest contributions would be teaching other species about courage. And we never imagined we would learn that there are different kinds of courage," Val replied. "Like the courage to trust someone else's judgment, or to break with tradition when necessary. She touched the window with one hand, feeling the subtle vibrations of the station's life support systems. We thought humans were reckless, but you're not. You've just mastered the art of calculated risk-taking. Every dangerous thing you do has a purpose, and every safety measure you take has value, Tom added. Together, we're stronger than either of us alone. The station's shift-change alarm sounded, but this time no one jumped or panicked. Val's crew had learned to distinguish between different types of alarms, just as she had learned to distinguish between recklessness and necessary risk. So, Tom said with a smile, ready for your first human-style spacewalk. I promise to follow all your safety protocols. Mostly. Val felt her hearts beat faster at the thought, but it was excitement now, not just fear. Yes, she said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. But first, you have to finish telling me about that Mars volcano incident. As they walked together toward the suit room, Val realized that fear, like so many things, was simply a tool. What mattered was how you used it. Her species had spent generations letting fear protect them. Now, they were learning to let it guide them toward something greater. The stars seemed brighter somehow, full of possibilities instead of dangers. And that perhaps was the greatest lesson the humans had taught them.